Hi, my name is Rebecca Allen. It is June 23rd and it's approximately 5:52 p.m. I'm going to be doing my third video diary for communication class. Today we're going to be talking about critical theory in the workplace, power, understanding power, um, thoughts on Emma Watson in her feminist video, um, fear in the workplace, and um, superior and subordinate um, strategic ambiguity, upward distortion, and so let's get started. Okay, so number one, what is critical theory? Critical theory is the study of an organization based on the work of Karl Marx. It is a philosophical approach to culture and especially to literature that seeks to confront the social, historical, and ideological forces and structures that produce and constrain it. Okay. Um, how do we use critical theory to understand oppressive circumstances in the workplace? Well, management in organizations is based on control. Traditional structures rely on bureaucratic procedures, and hierarchical controls favor interest of those of managers, while over interest of their subordinate, which is the employees. These control can be based on and viewed by power, ideology, and hegemony, and constructive control. First, let's understand power. According to Weber, power is the possibility of imposing one's will upon the behavior of the other person. It can also mean making a decision where there's conflict based on one's behavior. It's about who has the power and who doesn't. So when I think about this, I think about the kings and queens in their circumstances. Obviously, in the United States, we vote on every bill passed or presidency, obviously, since we're going through that right now. But in king and queen, they have the power of everything, and so that kind of reminds me of that. Hegemony is the idea that the subordinate group actively supports the interests of the dominant group, and more often not knowing, which is why oppression happens. So I think when you are, I would say, interviewing, because we're going to talk about that later, you tend to be very positive towards the other person, and you go with what they're saying, I think, to try to be more agreeable and not disagreeable in a job interview. I think that people tend that are when they're trying to impress somebody, they tend to be this way because they don't want to have conflict. Conservative control is based on adherence to socially constructive norms and values developed by organizational members themselves as they attempt to structure their environment. Well, this reminds me of like a company handbook, so that everybody follows it. So it's just the values and norms of the company just placed out there instead of being, I would say, told. I mean, you're told about a company handbook, but really everybody knows that when you're applying or when you have a job, there should be norms of that company. Okay, so the next is to share your thoughts about the Emma Watson video. So Emma Watson is trying to end gender inequality. First, she's the first female campaign at the UN doing this. She's a feminist fighting for women's rights. She talks about when women being submissive and men not feeling like they can talk about their feelings. To me, this is hegemony because Emma Watson So I guess I think because it's a subordinate under another, it's so submissive and a subordinate. That's how I feel about this. Feminist theorist, I feel like this reminds me of her too, because Emma Watson is today's version of feminist theorist, who raises our collective consciousness regarding the unequal treatment and oppositive circumstances women face in the workplace. It does. She's trying to. So, as a feminist organization communication, they have a ethical framework that she's trying to, like the definition of a situation, values and ideals, fairness, ethical principle, development of a solution. So she is trying to spread awareness of that. And so let's go on to the next one. Read a workplace culture of fear. That was about a coach acting wrongfully to the players, as well as another NFL player acting wrongful as an NFL player. Reading about the coach acting that way does make you realize that there are people out there loving the control of power. I mean, definitely. Fear. This leads us to fear because it thinks that we are trapped and makes us not want to talk about our ethics in our workplace. Everybody is entitled to be treated the right way, and I think codes of ethics in the workplace is very important. And everyone should feel like they have a voice. In the book, it said 22% of, according to the Ethics Resource Center survey, 22% observe abusive and intimidation behavior towards employees. That's kind of a low number, but it is happening, and I think having ethics and a code of ethics and standing by your values in the workplace is very important. So the next one is to watch how Netflix changes corporate culture. Well, Netflix is unique because they're based on values according to the behavior. So I wrote down, does someone have good judgment? She stated back in 2001 when the economy hit and 9/11 happened, and so she stated that she laid off 1/3 of her company, including herself. As a top executive and co-founder of the company, she was willing to step forward and decrease her pay so that the company could strive for the future. Because I think if you, as a company, and you don't do that, then and you're only out for one thing, and that's money, and not helping the company as a whole, then how are you going to succeed? If you're failing, obviously you got to do drastic decisions. I did like when she said that leaders have to earn their way in the company, that they don't buy in their way. I mean, that's very important too. It does show that you'll have to earn and strive your way through a company instead of just setting out some money and saying, oh, I can run a company, where obviously in the past there's been failures because of that. I mean, look at when I just read about Hewlett Packard, that they're all buying their way in, and that company failed extremely bad because their ethics and their values were not strong within that company. So let's see next. Which critical perspective helps you understand the culture of Netflix? Well, obviously I said the code of ethics. In code of ethics, you have to have many aspects, and that company also obviously values their ethics. So let's go on to the next one. In the lesson learned case study, what is the ultimate lesson? Well, reading about the meeting, obviously there was many people that were confused, that were upset, that were holding their tongue, that weren't even paying attention in the meeting. Like that one of the top guys were writing an email while she was trying to talk, and that was very frustrating to her. But this is an example to me of poor ideal speech situation. And in order to have a good communication, you must have certain things within that. So I let's see, hold on, sorry. Anyways, so in ideal communication, you have to have full attention, trustworthy, being able to understand what the other person is talking about. I think also with technology, communication can be obscured, and people can have a difficult understanding of what people are trying to say sometimes unless you portray it differently. So I just think this is a good example of poor ideal speech situation. So the next one. Let's see. How do you see organizational culture and critical theories intersecting to assist you with your understanding of communication and organization thus far? Well, obviously everybody has their own culture within, which we learned that in earlier chapters. And I think based on how you value your culture and your